Well, folks, it's a disaster, an unmitigated disaster. And I was saying it for weeks, and people said I had it out for the film, which I didn't at the time. I kind of do now. But I saw the writing on the wall that there was no hype for the Joker sequel, that if it had any chance to get some hype around it, like if people said that the musical elements are actually brilliantly done and it's actually a masterpiece of a film, that went out the door as soon as the initial critics' reactions came out and we found out that they hated it. But Joker Folie Deux is a complete disaster at the box office, and I would say perhaps the biggest disaster of the year so far, not perhaps in terms of how much it's going to lose relative to its budget, but in terms of what it was expected to do by the industry and what it's ultimately doing. Because that's the thing, is that the industry is just completely shocked by what's happening with this movie and the complete rejection of it. And in my opinion, they shouldn't have been at all. But it's just kind of amazing to watch that they are so completely dumbfounded by this movie doing badly at the box office and doing so badly in terms of its critical reception and audience reception. But the movie is currently set to get a $40 million domestic opening, and that's like 2.5 less than the first one. It's a disaster. It's a worse opening than The Flash. It is getting comparisons to movies like Morbius and the Marvels, and it's doing worse than the Marvels. That is truly incredible. Worse than the Marvels in terms of its box office. And it has the same opening weekend of Morbius. That is just truly shocking for a film that got $1 billion at its first movie. But first of all, I do think that these numbers being so low it wouldn't have to be this way unless this movie had just such toxic word of mouth. I think it was always going to underperform, but it's the word of mouth that is really killing it. And I would like to talk for a minute about why the industry should not be shocked by what this movie is doing. First of all, one of the big problems of Hollywood right now is they keep acknowledging that musicals do not sell, and they keep hiding movies like Wonka or the Mean Girls musical from actually being musicals until people actually get into the theater and sit down. That is what they tried to do with this film. But they keep greenlighting musicals, and that's so confusing. They keep saying that musicals do not sell with audiences, but they keep greenlighting them and acting surprised when they don't do well. And, I think Wonka, a movie like that, is a family film, so it ultimately can do well as a musical. I think that they need to understand that there's merely different audiences for these kinds of stuff. But making a Willy Wonka film into a musical is one thing, but making a Joker film, the sequel to a pseudo comic book movie that was very dark in tone, and making it a musical. And considering most people, the most mainstream people, when they think of musical, they probably think of Disney movies or Sound of Music or things like that. They're not thinking of darker, more artistic musicals. So I think that the first death knell for this movie was calling it a musical and alienating that entire audience. And especially the word of mouth that the musical elements absolutely don't work and that they're unnecessary to the film, which I can confirm, that also just kills the film. So it's like you shouldn't be truly shocked that this film is bombing because you made it a musical. Wasn't that a red flag to beginning? Why did they allow Todd Phillips to do this movie as a musical while acknowledging that musicals don't sell? That makes no sense. But here's what I think happened. And this is why I was fooled at one point, thinking that even with the lack of interest or the backlash to it, calling it a musical, that it was still going to sell, is because I thought, the first one I didn't think anyone would go see, but they went and saw it. And so I think that was the mindset going into this movie, that people saw the first movie, so of course they're going to go into the second. But I think that is really the big reason about why this movie is facing total rejection, is that it insults the intelligence of its audience. And that's the big problem. That's why it has a D on Cinema Score. That is the lowest Cinema Score for any quote unquote comic book film ever. To put it in perspective, usually when comic book movies are bad, they'll get a B. Like Suicide Squad 2016 got a B. If they're really bad and people are just, dunking on them and there's no entertainment quality whatsoever, then they'll be like Morbius or Madam Web. They'll get a C. Like a C is rare and shocking for a comic book film, and that was reserved to films like Morbius and Madam Web. To get a D a worse score than Madam Web. That should tell you just how much people hate this film. And I guarantee it is mainly because of the ending. Because the ending, I guess the point of it was supposed to be, oh, Arthur needs to be responsible for his own actions no matter what happened to him, and now he's getting what he deserved. I guess that was it. First of all, that still doesn't work because that's a regression of the first film, which was a cautionary tale about how the world treats people with mental illness and what that can lead to. So that's already something the audience isn't going to like. But as I watched that scene in the theater, and I don't care about spoiling it, you shouldn't see this movie, when the Joker gets stabbed and dies, I was like, I was already prepared for it because I had heard of it. But I'm like, if you just watch this on a surface level, it comes off as if the movie, after spending most of its time doing nothing, just says, and then he died. And that is the biggest drop off and biggest just kind of middle finger to the audience that you could possibly give them. And that is why this is getting so much hate. It's a bizarre, baffling film where nothing about it works. It somehow takes everything that you could do wrong with a film and puts it in it. It's boring. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't really have a story. But what little themes it has is just going back on the themes of the first film. And it has a terrible ending that makes it feel like you've been dropped off a cliff. Like that's why The Amazing Spider-Man 2 got such bad reviews, because was it a messed up movie? Yes, but you just could not get beyond the ending that just dropped off, and that is why this movie is getting so much hate. It insulted the audience. You can make a movie as bad as you want to, but you cannot insult your audience. Like Suicide Squad, The Marvels, Madam Web, all of these horrible films. I did not come out from the ending feeling insulted, and honestly, I felt kind of bad for days after watching this, because it's about the meta. It's about that this movie is made misunderstanding the audience of the first movies, and basically just going back on everything that movie was about, saying that you didn't understand it, or you didn't understand the way I wanted you to, so I'm going to change the story. I'm going to change the ending of it. Because what I think that the point was for Todd Phillips was, I think that what he thought was going to happen with this film is he thought that, there's no way he couldn't think that audiences wouldn't hate this, or maybe he did, because he was like, they'll like anything. But I think that Todd Phillips' goal with this film, because he never wants to make another, was like, if I'm going to make a Joker sequel and the studio will let me do anything, then I'm going to make it to repair my reputation with the media. And they're going to love this film, and they're going to give me the awards for it, because this was, until this point, made out to be a serious awards contender. But it's not anymore, because Todd Phillips' plan backfired, and critics themselves hate this film. They're not having it. Last I checked, it was 33% on Rotten Tomatoes, and in my opinion, it should be lower, and I bet it will go lower. Because the critics, like everybody, has just universally rejected this film because it's awful, and Todd Phillips is not the auteur director that he thinks he is. But this is going to be really bad for Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix's career with the choices that he's been making lately. Completely walking off a film that he got the green light to, now going to this, and apparently Joaquin Phoenix was a co-writer of this film. That is just insane. And apparently what I'm hearing is that they didn't even test screen this movie to audiences. And that's funny, because one of the things I was thinking of as I was watching is how did this get through test screenings? Because there was no indication leading up to the film that the studio thought that this movie was in trouble or had any controversy behind the scenes. I'm like, how did this do at test screenings? And nope, they didn't get any negative feedback. There is no way. Apparently, they didn't test screen it, and this should be a lesson. As we're having some conversations about studios listening to fans and listening to audiences and all that stuff, not test screening a film can lead to complete disaster, and I don't understand why they didn't test screen it. Did they want to avoid spoilers? If they had test screened this film, it might have saved it, but I still can't believe that these studios and executives went forward with it and thought it would be a good idea to do this. I don't think that Lady Gaga deserves any of the blame for this, and as much as people say that she's going to get it, I don't see that, because I think people see her more as a victim of this movie. She signed on thinking that she was going to get Oscars. She really committed to the role, unlearning how to sing and then creating an album for it. But her arc apparently was cut from the film, very kind of in an I don't really understand why, but that's what happened there. So this is just a complete disaster from Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix's part, and it's really just insulted everyone, and that's why you get the wholesale rejection. I mean, I didn't talk about this part in my review, but there's a moment in the film there where it's implied that the Joker gets assaulted, and they don't show it, but they imply it, and that's what they want. That's one of the catalysts, along with seeing one of his friends get killed, to make him not want to claim to be the Joker anymore. And that's being taken by some people as a way to take down the supposed fans of the first movie and the people who liked it or identify with that story at all. Like, you like the Joker as this character, you identify with him, well, we're gonna have him humiliated and degraded and killed. And like, you can't insult, if there is a part of your audience that sympathized with the character and in any way like that, or identified with him in any way, that's just really cruel to do. So it's no wonder this movie is getting so badly. And, you know, they keep saying you shouldn't want movies to bomb. You know, wanting or not wanting a movie to bomb has no effect on it, but it does kind of feel like karma that this movie was made with such I would say, ill intentions towards its audience and such disrespect, and it's being dropped from the awards consideration. It's being dropped by the critics. It's being dropped at the box office. It's probably going to be damaging to Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix's career. Like, you know, the line from all the movies now is you get what you deserve, and that's kind of what this feels like. And by the way, in terms of the Joker being assaulted, I have a big problem when that kind of thing is done just for shock value in things, and and that's what it feels like here. So that's another reason why I'm glad that this movie is not doing well, because I don't think that Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix deserve any accolades for this, and I feel really embarrassed that at any point I was ever defending this film, because I want to be optimistic. I want to believe that these films might turn out well. I wanted to believe that maybe the musical elements would turn out to be brilliant, but that's what I get for being optimistic about it. But the lesson that Hollywood needs to learn from this, and I think that some studios are learning this at this point, is you can't insult your audience. You can't make movies to go to war with with your audience. That just does not work. That's not how you run a business. But so it's really unfortunate that this is regressing what the momentum that the box office was happening. But the good news is Wild Robot doing pretty well at the box office for what it is, already crossed the century mark. I'm going to try to see the movie again, and I don't know if I'll get a chance to review it, but I would highly recommend that movie. And it's a movie that does respect the intelligence of its audience and seems like it was really created by people who cared, unlike Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix. But so yeah, go see that movie. Thank you, patrons, as always, for supporting this channel. Do you think that the Joker sequel deserved to bomb, or do you think that Hollywood, that this proves that they're still very, very clueless, that they thought that this was going to be successful? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.